What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my watch list ahead of Game Week 4. So going to go through some of the players that we might potentially be looking to bring in over the next couple of weeks. Just before we jump into that, I wanted to go through my Game Week 3 reaction. So for any of you that watched the video on Friday, you'll know that I got married over the weekend. Thank you, by the way, for all the messages. There was literally hundreds of them. So I do appreciate it, even if I haven't got back to every single one. And because of that, I couldn't do the knee-jerk stream yesterday, and I'm probably not going to have enough time to do it today either, so I thought I would include it in the watch list video. I don't want you to think that because I've had a bad week I'm trying to hide away. It's just one of those things, right? So it wasn't great. If you see on screen, I'm on the FPL page here. 26 points, really bad. I've fallen from I was like 138k or something like that. I'm now 955,000. Again, I'm not really too worried about that. It's still very early on in the season. We've still potentially got 3 players to play tonight as well. Salah captain, Luis Diaz, and of course, who's the other one? Trent Alexander-Arnold against Man United away, if that game goes ahead. If it doesn't go ahead, then I'm getting a few points off the bench at least. 8 for Andreas, 2 for Reed, and 1 for Greenwood. So I get another 11 points off the bench, and then the extra 6 points for my captain switching to Haaland. So that wouldn't be ideal. It would still be a pretty bad point score in total, less than 40. But these things happen. I think it's important when you have a week like this not to overreact, especially if your team looks good for the following week. Fair enough if you've got a really bad team this week and it still looks really bad next week, then maybe it's time to panic. But for me, I think it's okay. So the only players that came in with points so far were Gabriel, Martinelli, and Jesus, obviously the 3 Arsenal boys. So they all returned, but they didn't really score a huge amount of points, right? Of course, it's nice to get another clean sheet from Gabriel and an assist from Jesus and Martinelli, but no double figures there. And obviously Haaland, a bit like Kane, just 1 goal, no bonus points either. So not an ideal week, to say the least. But again, if I bring up my team for next week, it looks pretty good, right? Man City have got Crystal Palace, which might be a hard game. Crystal Palace started the season really well. And then both Liverpool and Arsenal got newly promoted sides in Bournemouth and Fulham. And then, okay, Chelsea, not great. The 3-0 loss to Leeds. And it's going to be difficult to keep a clean sheet against Leicester as well. But I can't panic too quickly on it. I definitely don't want to get rid of Reece James. And I've only actually played Cucurella in my team once so far as well. So I'm not really looking to get rid of him. So pretty good. I think if you look at it looks pretty good for next week, I should say. So again, no need to panic, but we will talk about some of the players that I might be looking to bring in. But if we look at the results for Game Week 3, look, Spurs 1-0. Obviously, Perisic owners, fair play if you kept him. You probably deserve some points at this point. Got the clean sheet, got the 3 bonus points, and the assist, so happy days. The 3-0 to Chelsea, I'm not quite sure what happened. Obviously, the first goal was a big mistake from Mendy, and Chelsea just didn't necessarily look comfortable for a lot of that game. Then Koulibaly goes and gets sent off, which is probably good for Cucurella for next week, but not great overall for the team. And perhaps we're going to have to keep an eye on Chelsea going forward, because they are missing Kovacic, they are missing Kante as well, and that is not ideal for that midfield. Like, Gallagher is a good player, but I don't think he necessarily really replaces those two. I think the killer for me was that I did Neto to Reed, and I could have just banked that 1 million, gone into this week with 2 free transfers, but instead I used the second transfer to go from Sanchez, who got 3 saves, so got an extra point for that, got the clean sheet, and he also got 1 bonus point as well. So I sold his 8-pointer to Edison, who got 1 point. So I lost 7 points there. And interestingly, I think if I had... And these things happen, right? I'm not really worried about it. But had I started with Walker instead of Cucurella, I would have already had an extra 5 points. I wouldn't have switched Sanchez to Edison, because obviously I would have had 3 City already. And then I'd have another extra 7 points from Sanchez. So already those little small things and those knock-on effects can have a big kind of result by the end of the season. But again, I am not panicking. I think if you look at the team for next week, it looks pretty much ideal. There's a few players in there that I could have instead, but overall I think the team setup is really nice. So yeah, bad week, really bad week, 26 points, still very early on, no reason to panic. If you've had a bad game week and your team looks good for Game Week 4, it's okay. So first up has to be Harry Kane. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Spurs players over the next week or so, especially for attackers, because the fixtures look so good on paper. Like Forest, Fulham in the next 3 weeks, then you add Leicester in Game Week 8, all look pretty good. West Ham away is not super easy, but it's not that difficult either. I'd be perfectly happy having to play Kane that game. And then in Game Week 7, okay, it's Man City away, but that's an either or. I'm either going to have Kane against Man City away, or I'm going to have Haaland at home to Spurs. And for that one particular week, yes, maybe Haaland's the better option, but over the next 5, it could be Harry Kane. Now, this is partly to do with potential rotation. I talked about this in the team selection video for Game Week 3, that in the back of my mind, Haaland to Kane, that switch was something that I was thinking about. Now, I did say I probably wouldn't do it for Game Week 3, and ultimately it hasn't mattered so far. They've both scored the same amount of points that week anyway. But going forward, we might see rotation when the midweek games start. And in Game Week 5, when Kane plays West Ham away. Now, annoyingly, the fixture for Man City is Nottingham Forest. You don't really want to get rid of Haaland for that. But Pep has basically said there's going to be rotation. I think the difficult thing is you don't know specifically which game it'll be. We always assume it'll be the game in the middle. So he'll always play weekend, miss a game, weekend, miss a game. But it doesn't necessarily always work like that. He could play 3 of the next 4. And which one he misses out, we just don't know. We're just going to assume it's probably the middle one, right? So this is what Pep has said on Haaland. Last season, he didn't play 90 minutes because he was injured. The physios and doctors did an incredible job since he arrived to avoid injuries. Now he has 1 game a week. I tell you now, when we have games every 3 days, that Erling will not play. I will play Julian Alvarez. When we start with games every 3 days, everyone is going to play. So there's going to be rotation. He's literally come out and said it. Now, he might say that and it might not happen. Maybe Haaland will play from the start, play 50 minutes, then get brought off, play 60 minutes, then get brought off. You just don't know. But I feel like Kane's expectations for minutes over the next few weeks are definitely better. There's nothing to say that at some point when the midweek games and the European games start, that Conte won't play Richarlison through the middle. But I think it's more likely Richarlison comes in for Son instead and Kane just keeps playing because he's a bit of a machine. He's always playing, right? So, and look, you can say the same for Son, but at some point Richarlison's probably going to play, and I think he probably slots in slightly better for Son. I'm not saying like for like because Son is such a good player, but I think the way Kane plays that number 9 role, almost like combined as a number 10 sometimes, that's completely different to how Richarlison will play it. So it's not that Kane won't be rotated. I just think there's much less chance of it happening just because Haaland has had so many issues kind of last year and stuff like that. And I know a lot of people have said, well, you know, he's not 30 plus years old. He doesn't need resting. Well, Pep is saying something different. So this move could be on. I think, again, if we're talking about my specific team, annoyingly, I've now used my 2 free transfers in Game Week 3. Had I had 2 free transfers in Game Week 4, doing Haaland to Kane then roll in the other one would have been quite nice. Whereas if I use the transfer this week, I still only have 1 in Game Week 5. So I need to give it some consideration. But if I am prepared to just assume that Haaland will miss 1 game over the next 3, and it could be that Nottingham Forest game, which is probably the best one they've got in the next 3, then this is the week to get Harry Kane because he plays Forest this week. So try and get those points against the newly promoted side, and then just hope that over the next 3, Kane outscores Haaland, and I don't live to regret making that move. So Kane firmly on the watch list. I briefly thought about it last week, and with those quotes from Pep Guardiola, I'm super tempted to do it now. So speaking of Spurs players, Perisic has to go on the watch list. He's got his first start and he's done really well. 75-minute run out, assist, clean sheet, 3 bonus points. Happy days if you held on to him. And to be fair, I got it wrong on Friday. I looked at the quotes from Conte and I wasn't sure whether he was going to start again. That put me off. So for anyone that brought him in or kept hold of him, enjoy your points. 12 points is amazing. And now, like, I am obviously a little bit gutted that I don't own him. I think, again, if I'm thinking about my own team, I used those 2 free transfers last week, so I've only got 1 this week. I can't get Perisic in 1 move, so I'd have to take a hit, which is a little bit annoying because obviously Forest away is the game you'd want him for, and then definitely for Fulham at home as well. The only kind of thing that's causing me not to panic straight away is, 1, I knew I'd miss a haul at some point, and I still think my defence looks pretty good. Yes, I know a lot of people are going to say James and Cucurella double up is not looking fantastic right now, and Chelsea defence could crumble again against Leicester, but I'm not going to panic on that. But the main thing is that, like Pep has just said this week, Conte said similar things about the games every 3 days and there having to be some rotation. So is Perisic, who didn't start in Game Week 1 or 2, suddenly now going to start Game Week 3 and 4, the midweek game in Game Week 5 and Game Week 6? Possibly not given what Conte has said. So I have to hope the same thing happens that I said on Twitter, that at some point I'm going to miss a big haul, which I have this week, but hopefully the minutes in the other games are going to be a little bit lower, which will mean not owning him won't be so bad. And obviously that could be famous last words, right? He might go and play all of these games and haul in every single one, but that is kind of what I'm holding on to. And again, we always think it's going to be the middle game where teams are going to rotate, but they're not going to rotate every single player for that game. So it might be a case that yes, he plays Nottingham Forest. Whether he plays the West Ham or the Fulham game, it's hard to know, because he might think, Conte this is, the West Ham's a little bit more difficult, so he wants Perisic for that, and he'll play Sessegnon in one of the easier games, and obviously Perisic owners would rather it was the other way around. Again, I think if you've got him already, you just hold him and you play him in every game, and you just take those bench-ins as they come, because you know what he can do in the other games. But for those of us that have already got like a 4 or 5 at the back, we're quite happy with those defenders, and we don't have money in the bank. It makes it a little bit harder to justify, especially for a hit. So he's got to be on the watch list, because if he starts again and performs well, I'm going to have to start thinking about how to bring him in. It's just very difficult for my team to do it in Game Week 4. But if you can do it in one move, given that he's just had obviously going to get another week off now between 3 and 4, it looks like a pretty nice transfer in. I'm going to be very jealous of not having him against Forest away. So I'm not knee-jerking and making these transfers straight away, but obviously I've got the idea of potentially bringing Perisic in the back of my mind, so I need to consider how I might fund that. So if I've got 2 £5 million defenders, for example, in Gabriel and Cucurella, I could downgrade one of them to a 4.5 and then use those funds to upgrade to Perisic. Now, Lewis Dunk is probably top of my list, because I think the Brighton defence is looking pretty good right now. Yes, Leicester at home is not necessarily an ideal fixture, because Leicester always find a way to score, and right now Leeds seem to be finding lots of goals as well. So I'm not saying the next 5 fixtures are really easy for Brighton, but I do rate their defence. I think Potter's got them well set up. They don't really seem to be missing Cucurella or Bissouma at all so far. So I think there is lots of potential for returns. And now I've sold Sanchez, I'm kind of happier to get a Brighton defender in, because I wouldn't have wanted to double up. So that could be one way round of doing it. Obviously, Edison downgrade could be another way as well. The other option is just to go to Saliba, who is 4.6, and obviously because he's gone up, it's not ideal, but Perisic has come down, so that would give me the 0.4 to upgrade the other one. So Gabriel to Saliba to still cover that Arsenal defence, and then Cucurella to Perisic could be an option. I know most of the time we don't want to do a sideways move, but it could be an option in the future. The only thing that might slightly put me off Saliba is just the fact of whether he's 100% nailed. I really just want to see Tomiyasu start, and then which 2 centre-backs start in the middle. The way Arsenal are playing, they might just keep Ben White there and keep playing Saliba and Gabriel in the middle with Zinchenko and possibly Tierney at some point at left-back. And in the end, it just won't matter. Saliba will just keep playing. But in the back of my mind, until I see Tomiyasu start, I'm always going to be slightly worried, which is probably why I've got Dunk on the watch list. So again, having Sanchez in goal and a bit more money in defence is probably a better combination. But until I end up wildcarding, or until I've got 2 free transfers just to do something a bit more interesting, I've probably just got to play with what I've got. And Edison is in goal, and with the fixtures that Man City have got, I probably don't want to move him on too soon, I would say. So a 4.5 million defender is definitely in the back of my mind. Lewis Dunk's probably at the top of my list, because I think he's absolutely nailed. I'm not 100% sure of that with Salah, but I'd say I'm getting closer and closer. I think he's playing so well, and Arsenal are doing so good. I don't think Arteta will want to mess up that centre-back partnership. But there's still just some doubts in the back of my mind, which is probably why I've got him slightly behind Dunk, but not by too much. So just a quick look at the watch list table. I don't think there's anything too crazy here. I mean, obviously, we've not seen the Liverpool-Man United game at the time of recording, but I don't think it's going to change my mind that Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are really good options. Just to explain some of the blue arrows. So I think Cucurella and Walker are still really good. I wouldn't be panicking after just what happened in Game Week 3, but I don't know if people are going to go so much out of their way to buy them now, but I definitely don't think they're sells either. With Trippier, he's got his really hard game against Man City out of the way. Yes, he conceded a few goals, got the yellow card, but he still scored. So anyone that played him, happy days, because, okay, they've got Liverpool in Game Week 5, but outside of that, Newcastle's still looking pretty good. So Trippier definitely on the watch list. And the only reason Perisic and Saliba are on blues and not greens is just because of those slight doubts. So with Saliba, whether he's 100% nailed on, although again they're playing so well, I don't know if Arteta will want to kind of mess that up. And with Perisic, it's just those quotes last week from Conte about possible rotation. It might not matter. If he misses one game every now and again, who cares if he's going to go and get you 12 pointers all the time? And we know he's not always going to get double figures, but he'll get a clean sheet one game, then an attack and return in the next, and probably will return enough points at 5.4 million. But it's just those slight worries in the very short term about possible rotation. That's why I put him as a blue. But if you want to go for him, absolutely go for it. Really good fixture this week. In terms of midfielders, very interesting with Man City. What do we say about Foden? He's pretty much nailed on. Look, he's not Kevin De Bruyne levels of nailed onness, but he is going to start more often than not. Pep hooks him in the last game at 45 minutes to play Jack Grealish, possibly partly because he didn't pass to Haaland, and yet he still gets a start the next game, right? He does get pretty regular minutes under Pep Guardiola because he's so versatile, can play in different positions, and obviously, of course, he's a great player too. So I still think Foden looks pretty good, and Gundogan has started again as well. Bernardo Silva was on the right, so for anyone that's gone for him at 7.5, another goal. He just has that knack of getting into the right places and could be a really good option. I still have, and I always probably will, those slight doubts about Man City midfielders. At some point, Gundogan's going to get a rest. Bernardo Silva plays in the middle, and then Mahrez or Alvarez or someone like that plays on the right instead. Or Foden goes to the right and Grealish plays on the left. So I don't think I could buy him right now, but we've got to keep an eye on him, right? Another start, another goal. Gundogan's decent value. Definitely decent value. Zaha, I still personally waiting for the fixtures just to completely clear. But again, he's on penalties. Crystal Palace playing extremely well right now. He's definitely an option around the £7 million price. And then looking at the forwards, again, nothing really too out of the ordinary. Maybe Haaland should be a blue instead of a green because of those quotes from Pep Guardiola. Possibly that's a little bit contradictory because I've got Perisic and Saliba as blue and not as Haaland. So that's something to know. But otherwise, Wilson, Jesus, Mitrovic, Tony and Kane all looking proper decent. And I've stuck Welbeck on the watch list as well because Brighton are playing really nicely. Like, I know he didn't get the goal, but that second goal against West Ham was really nice. They're playing some really good football right now, so we've got to keep an eye on them. Plus, they've got proper decent fixtures. So that's the watch list table. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you have enjoyed that video, give it a like, hit that subscribe button. Hopefully, we're now back to normal with videos throughout the rest of this week. Normal deadline streams and knee-jerk streams for kind of game week 4, 5 and onwards as well. So thank you very much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you again tomorrow.